So good evening, everyone. Today is Thursday, March 11th, 2021. The time is precisely 6 p.m. I'm officially calling this meeting to order, and I'm going to ask our clerk and timekeeper, Kathy Ford, to please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, then. So we completed the pledge. Attending are commissioners to my left, Leslie Duncan. To my right, Bill Brooks. I'm the chairman, Chris Fillios. Welcome again, everyone. Okay, just some opening comments, if you will, rules of play. The applicant and consultant will have 20 minutes for the opening statements. After that, we'll have folks offering their opinions, pro or against or neutral. Whoever wishes to speak will be strictly limited to 3 minutes. If you go beyond, I'm going to have to cut you off. So what's going to happen is you'll see the green light that says go. When you see yellow, you're down to 30 seconds. Red means done, okay? At the completion of the public comment period, the applicant will have a chance to rebut any of the comments that are made. Once again, the applicant and or their consultant will have 20 minutes to do so. And so those are the rules of play. We'll have order. I don't think that's going to be a problem with this group. And when you do come up, please come up to the microphone. Try to get within a couple of inches so we can pick it up on YouTube. So this is available on YouTube for live viewing. Let me introduce some of the players. I introduced Kathy Ford, and I almost forgot one of the eminent members of our staff on the YouTube, and our communications manager, Nancy Jones, and of course, conducting the Zoom events, if you will, is David Callahan, who's our Director of Community Development, that some of you more commonly know as Planning and Zoning. Okay, and so off we go. I'm going to poll my two co-commissioners for any potential conflicts of interest. None for Leslie? None for Bill? None for me. Okay, off we go. Public hearing, and this is an action item, which means there'll be a decision made. Case number CUP, which stands for Conditional Use Permit 19-0004, Upper Columbia Corporation of Seventh-day Adventist, for conditional use permit to establish a private school and place of worship located on approximately 10 acres in the agricultural zone. And we'll leave it at that. I'm going to turn it over to Director Callahan for any comments.
I have none this evening, Mr. Chairman. Vlad Finkel is our resident expert and is fully prepared to present this evening.
Vlad, go right ahead, please.
Good evening, Commissioners. For the record, Vlad Finkel with Kootenai County. Before I proceed with my presentation, I would like to advise you that I have poor connection and that I have already been disconnected at least once. So if that happens again, please advise me and I can restart at a point where I left off and you couldn't hear my presentation. With that said, as you have just stated, this is a request for a conditional use permit to establish two different uses on site, a private school and a place of worship. The subject parcel of land is located north of Hayden Lake at the intersection of Lancaster and Rimrock Road. The subject parcel of land is located on, or it's 10 acres in size, located in the agricultural zone. As you can see, based on the zoning map, this is a very unique area where the zoning south of Lancaster is agricultural suburban with a number of residential subdivisions that have been historically developed in the area. And north of Lancaster, there are large tracts of land that have at some point been utilized for agricultural pursuits, and it's all zoned agriculture. The comp plan designation for the subject parcel is country. The site is currently does not have any agricultural operations on it. There is an old farming house on site with an outbuilding, and the remainder of the property is vacant of any structures, and it's fairly flat. The applicant is proposing to develop this site in two different phases. Phase one will consist of a private school, which will be approximately 20 thousand square feet, and it will start off between 1 and 20 students. And as the development of the site progresses and they have more students that would like to attend the school, they may have as many as 100 students at 5 years. The second phase will consist of a place of worship, and this will be an extension of the existing building with 22 more thousand square feet that will be utilized for community services, educational health services, and so forth. The applicant intends to start with at least 200 parishioners, and at a year 5 of build out, they would have as many as 300 parishioners. Staff had did an overlay of the proposed site plan over the ArcGIS map to show how the proposal would fit within the existing environment. And we made some calculations based on the previous hearings and some of the questions that came up through the 2 public hearings before the hearing examiner. So the proposal will include a 42,000 square foot building, and based on our calculations, that's a little less than 10% of the actual size of the 10-acre parcel. The code allows for up to 35% of the property to be covered with structures, with 65% left as open space. Additionally, staff had calculated or made an approximate calculation of the proposed parking and driving surface, and that would consist of additional 126,000 square feet, which is approximately 3 acres. So the overall development, if you will, on this site will consist of approximately 4 acres, with 6 acres retained in its natural condition. The code only requires that you have a ratio of 35% coverage with structures being buildings, and 65% left as open space or other improvements on site to support the facility, including parking and driving surface. These are some of the renderings that were presented to us by the architect on this project. I would let them, at their presentation, address the design form of this building and how it fit within the agricultural community in the location where it's proposed. Through the agency comment period, we solicited comments from a number of agencies listed on the screen. A majority of them had either no opposition or had some of the requirements that the applicant would have to meet through the development process. The Hayden Lake Sewer District and the North Kootenai Water and Sewer District issued preliminary will serve letters that would provide services to this proposal, meaning that there would be no need to drill an individual well or have a septic on site to address effluent discharge. There would be services provided by these agencies to address water and effluent discharge needs. The hearing examiner heard this request on September 17th and subsequently recommended denial of the request, citing that the proposal was too intensive for the area and was not compatible with the existing agricultural conditions of the neighborhood. Following the submittal of the first hearing examiner's recommendation, staff recognized that unfortunately the hearing examiner nor staff did not address the requirements under the RLUPA, which is the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act of 2000 standards. Therefore, on October 8th, Community Development Director Callahan, David Callahan, presented the issue to the board, and that on that date, the board ruled that the request should be remanded back to the hearing examiner for further analysis of our LUPA requirements. The board also motioned that the hearing examiner has the discretion to make a written analysis based on the our LUPA standards with or without a subsequent public hearing. In December of last year, the hearing examiners decided that it would be prudent for the sake of due process to hold a second public hearing to allow testimony specifically related to the ARLUPA requirements, as well as any other testimony that both those who are in favor and those who are opposed wish to state on the record. On January 21st of this year, the hearing examiner held a second public hearing and subsequently recommended denial of the request. The three main takeaways from the recommendation were as follows. The hearing examiner stated that the ARLUPA standards were not an issue with the recommendation of denial. Moreover, the scale and the intensity of the proposed development was not in line or compatible with the existing built environment, as previously stated in the first recommendation, and the proposal conflicts with the comprehensive plan goals and policies. So, just to recap some of the concerns and comments that were brought up during the first two public hearings and the public comments that were received, as well as the third public comment period for tonight's hearing, we received a total of 36 comments in support of the application based on the first two hearings and the one for tonight. We received 191 comments in opposition, as well as one live petition of 1,350 plus comments or signatures in opposition of the request. Once again, this is the site plan of the proposed development, and I stand for any questions that you have at this time.
Any questions for Vlad?
No.
Leslie, no. Bill? None for me, Vlad. Thank you. Okay, so at this time, we'll turn it over to the applicant. Sandy, did you want to?
Thank you, Chairman. Sandy Young, 3906 North Schreiber Way, Coeur d'Alene. And rather than doing my PowerPoint from the other room, I just wanted to print it so I could stand in front of you and make this easier. I was the one that held up the hearing examiner hearing because I called in incorrectly, so didn't want to take that chance again. So thank you. And so I am not going to go over any portion of what the proposal is. Vlad did a great job of that. I was at your deliberations in December when you heard this before, so I know you're familiar with it. What I do want to talk about during this applicant time, and I plan to take up a portion of the time, and then Greg Embry, who is an attorney at Witherspoon Kelly, will address RLUIPA.
Sure.
So 3 guiding regulations that I know you are all well aware of, but for the record, I would just like to state them. The comprehensive plan, which is a guide to what we're doing tonight and on all applications that you receive on development permits. The zoning ordinance, which is a regulation, and then RLUIPA being federal law that now, before this case, I wasn't familiar with, and now I'm very familiar with it, as I know you are. As Vlad stated, the comp plan designation is country, and we know that the comp plan is a policy document that's issued as a basis for all land use regulatory documents and describes the county in broad terms. So it doesn't regulate, it only guides. With respect to agricultural lands, in particular Goal 4, it states, our mission is to support the ag industry and preservation of prime ag land and develop regulations which allow for schools, churches, and other public and quasi-public uses in rural areas. I thought it interesting that of all the uses that could have been described as an allowable use or as a vision in the comp plan, schools and churches were one of them, and to be stated specifically in rural areas. The subject site is currently prime, I'm going to call it prime ag land, not because it's being used that way and there is no ag exemption on it right now, but it has been in the past. And I make the statement, it will remain prime ag land even after development, and I'll elaborate on that a little bit more. So we've got the comp plan as the guide, we've got the zoning ordinance as a regulation. We know that it allows places of worship and assembly by conditional use. The items A through Z in the zoning ordinance, section 8.5.119, regulates those conditions. This request meets all of those conditions. In fact, more conditions have been added by staff and by the hearing examiner. We know that every application that comes into David Callahan's department has to meet building code, site disturbance, landscaping standards, including lighting, noise, signage. All of those are spelled out in advance, and this application understands that they do meet it now and they will have to meet it. And then because I worked in that department for 10 years, it always was assurance to me that after approval, and this is my fourth point, with a CUP, there's always that next bite of the apple, meaning the applicant has to come in, apply for a demo permit first, apply for a site disturbance permit and a building permit, and at that time, all of the conditions that have been spelled out in your order of decision are applied, as well as every other regulation that David's department lives by. So we've got the guide, we've got the regulation, RLUIPA. I had to boil this down for myself, and I had Greg take a look at it to be sure I was stating it correctly. But land use regulations cannot impose a substantial burden on religious exercise of a person or institution except when there is a compelling governmental interest. And if there is a compelling governmental interest, the government shall pursue it in the least restrictive manner. What are the church's constraints at this time? Their sanctuary's too small. Their Sabbath school classrooms are too small. There's no handicap access to their second story that would accommodate extended wheelchair access. There's no space for a counseling office. The main lobby, people funnel as they come down the stairs and from the sanctuary on the main floor into the foyer, which is quite small. And I feel safe making that statement that it is too small for safe ingress and egress. I've been in there and I can state that from experience. There are no meeting rooms for church committees. When I met with the building committee, we were in a small children's classroom sitting at their tables and chairs. The cost to remodel and expand the parking and landscaping would exceed the cost of new construction because this land was donated to the church. And I'm not sure, I don't recall if that was ever in any document you've seen. This land was donated specifically with the condition, a deed restriction, that nothing else can be built there but their church school. And then most importantly, the church's current site lacks space for their agricultural pursuits. So this is an area we haven't gotten into before, and as I dug deeper and talked more with the church, I realized how much ag pursuits are part of what they do there. There's not enough ag space available at their present location, and I have a couple of aerial maps in here that we'll refer to so you can see the difference as the two are side by side. The church and school's curriculum is primarily agriculturally based. And when I say church and school, I want to use those two words together because one would not be operating without the other in this particular congregation. They are a hands-on outdoor education every week that consists of classes in horticulture, agriculture, floriculture, arboriculture, and beekeeping, as well as carpentry skills, all activities that require open space and prime ag land. A part of the school's curriculum is studying Bible agricultural production. So these kids are learning to analyze and put into action what they're learning in that space that would be provided. It's interactive learning at its best. The applicant's current location cannot fully support these activities. There is no space for an outdoor organic garden that they plan to construct. The new location will provide space for a greenhouse as well as a large outdoor garden, raised garden beds, and space to construct carpentry projects that the students undertake. They have constructed a small greenhouse that's basically on skids, and it's sitting on partially on a corner of their parking lot right now, and they're hoping that once they get started, they can move that, relocate that, get it permitted for a site. So the applicant is only able to construct the church and school on a site that meets their space and ag-based needs because this land came to them at no cost. You can see their present site, the area that's cleared but then heavily treed around their present building. And then, of course, the proposed site, which I know you're familiar with and Vlad has already shown us. So we've talked about the comp plan. I talked about the zoning ordinance. I talked about RLUIPA. And I made the comment that RLUIPA, back to that land use regulations cannot impose a substantial burden except where there's a compelling governmental interest. A substantial burden would result if this conditional permit were denied and the church were forced to remain at their current site. We did look at other sites that could be comparable if the church had to purchase them, and in light of the economic climate we have right now, they were at a $3 million. What is a compelling governmental interest? It must involve a clear, present, grave, and immediate danger to public health and safety. A compelling governmental interest must be based on facts in the record. It cannot be speculation. There were some portions of the hearing examiner report that said could be, maybe, perhaps they could expand. For the record, they could not expand beyond what they have tonight, and I know David would confirm this, without an amended CUP. So I want to be sure that's clear on the record. They get what they get with the conditions that come out of tonight. A compelling governmental interest includes public safety. It doesn't include traffic. It doesn't include aesthetics. And it must be advanced by the least restrictive means. As Vlad had stated, there was no opposition from any public agency from which they solicited comments. Community Development, Building, Lakes Highway, North Kootenai Water, Hayden Lake Recreational Water and Sewer, Fish and Game, North Kootenai Fire District, and DEQ. No concerns. Some had conditions, and those have been incorporated, but no concerns. In summary, the application before you is a request to construct a church and school on 10 acres of agriculturally zoned land, where over 50% of their curriculum is agriculturally based. This request meets the intent of the comp plan, the regulations of the zoning ordinance, complies with RLUIPA, and has shown a substantial burden exists. And not one public agency has found that there is a clear, present, grave, and immediate danger to the public with this request. Thank you.
Any questions for Ms. Young? Leslie, Bill? I do have one question. What's the size of the current lot where the church is presently located?
I believe it's 10 acres.
It is
Could
10
be,
acres, okay.
give or take, just a small amount.
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you.
Just look that up.
Any other questions? Okay,
Thank you.
thanks so much.
Okay, so Greg Embry.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. My name is Greg Embry. I'm an attorney at Witherspoon Kelly here in Coeur d'Alene. And for my part of things, it will only address the requirements.
Yeah, can you get as close as you can to the mic?
Sure.
Yeah.
Appreciate it, thank you.
So this conditional use application, like a lot of applications and matters that come before the board, present competing interests. And in this case, there are competing legal authorities. On the one hand, we've got the Kootenai County zoning ordinance and comprehensive plan, which help us guide decisions in the development of our county. On the other hand, we have a federal statute. Congress struggled with how to preserve and protect everyone's, yours, mine, the church's, any entity's free exercise of religion, and passed this Arlupa statute. And so what Arlupa prohibits is a land use decision that substantially burdens religious exercise except in a two-part circumstance. And that circumstance is part one, a compelling governmental interest that justifies the substantial burden, and part two, advancing that governmental interest in the least restrictive way possible. So the analysis and engaging in this challenge of sorting through these competing interests for the board, I think breaks down into three questions. The first question is there, would denying the conditional use permit application substantially burden the church's religious exercise? Question two, is that substantial burden justified by the single allowable circumstance, and that is a compelling governmental interest? And if so, is denial the least restrictive way of protecting that governmental interest? So as to the first question, would a denial substantially burden the church's exercise of its religion? And Sandy went through a number of inadequacies or aspects of the current site that simply don't exist. There are programs, activities that are limited. The church simply cannot offer all its programs and offerings to all the people it would like to. But in addition, there are programs that it simply cannot engage in. There's no space for agricultural activities. There's no space for a school. Seating capacity is inadequate. And in addition, there are also safety issues and ADA compliance issues. Each one of these alone, if forced to stay at the current site, which would result from a denial, alone constitutes a substantial burden on the church's religious exercise. It's been suggested, the hearing examiner in her recommendation suggested that, well, the church can simply remodel. They can simply add on. And that opens up a considerable amount of additional burden. If the church were to simply add a classroom, for example, it's not just the classroom. It would also have to expand parking, add sewer capacity, add fire suppression. Adding sewer capacity alone, that one element, represents a $500,000 expense. So if forced to stay there, the substantial burden is compounded. The inadequacies will remain, plus there will be additional expense, and there's simply no way around that at the current site. Each one of these inadequacies currently experienced, or the programs that simply cannot be offered, each one of those would be remedied at the new site. So given that, the second question is, if we've got a substantial burden, can it be justified by a compelling governmental interest? And a compelling governmental interest that is recognized under this federal statute is an interest of the highest priority. It contemplates a clear and present and imminent danger to public health and safety. An example would be crime prevention, or an environmental hazard, or a safety hazard. And the sources for these types of compelling governmental interests, these high-level interests, would otherwise come from the reporting agencies in this case. But in this case, Lakes Highway District, the Fire District, the Sewer District, the Water District, DEQ, Fish and Game, and the Sheriff, none of them raised a compelling governmental interest. So there has to be that alignment for the county. If they're going to substantially burden a religious person or a religious entity's religious exercise, that has to be matched up with a compelling governmental interest. And even then, and this is the third part, that compelling governmental interest has to be advanced or protected in the least restrictive way possible, in a manner that restricts religion to the least degree possible. And here, what we would offer is, even if a compelling governmental interest did exist, denial is not the least restrictive means of advancing a compelling governmental interest. Conditions of approval would be the least restrictive means of doing that. And so with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Greg?
I do. What money is going to be used to build the facility? Where's the money coming from?
Financing?
Partly financing.
Donations and financing then, okay.
And so the financing and donations can't be done at the current property?
They likely could, but the magnitude would be far greater than at the new site.
Okay, is there a quote, is there anything in print that says that the additional sewer that's required would be $500,000?
Not that I have, but the project engineer could probably speak to that.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay then, thank you. Okay, let's move on to the comments. We're going to try to mix them up.
Well, the applicant still has 3 more people and still has time.
How much time is left for the applicant? Okay, so we have a minute and 30 seconds. All right, so let's take it to 30 minutes for them so these folks can speak. Okay,
Yes.
yeah, we'll add 10 minutes. Okay, fine, for the 3 folks. So one is David Morgan, for the applicant, wishes to speak in favor?
I don't think anyone else, Chairman, wishes to speak at this time, perhaps at rebuttal.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Yeah, we complete our applicant's presentation.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Thank you. All right, then. Reset, Kathy. Okay.
So if you want to call 2 up at a time.
Okay, so what we'll do is we'll call 2 folks up at a time. One will speak, the other one can somewhat socially distance. And then this way you come forward and we can move as quickly as we can. Once again, try to get as close to the microphone as you can, ideally within 2 to 3 inches. And so let's start with Linda, is it Kulesa? Is opposed and wishes to speak? Come forward, ma'am. And waiting in the wings we'll have, is it Dory?
Annette is my daughter, and so if I go over, I'm gonna give her time to mine.
All right, she's next.
Okay, that's fine. You want to come forward then? No. Oh, it's
Yeah,
only
you
if
have
you
to
go
stand
over?
where it
Okay,
is,
fine,
yeah.
but behind you is it Dory Eckenrother? In favor, may wish to speak? Is Dory here? Did I say that right?
It might be Dawn.
Or is it Dawn?
Dawn.
Forgive me. Mixing the R's in the end. Sir, do you want to just be ready? You're going to decline at this point. Okay, so let's begin anyway with Ms. Kulesa. Go right ahead, ma'am.
Okay, I don't know if you read my article in the newspaper the other day. It came out yesterday. It's a big one, 3 columns, stating why I oppose this project. Anyway, my name is Linda Kulesa, and I live right across the street from this project at 3496 East Lancaster Road. And I started a whole talk, but some of these things that they brought up are ridiculous. One of which is that their school is doing all of these agricultural projects. I live across the street and I have a gigantic garden. And let me tell you, this is the worst place in the world because the wind blows all the time. And not only that, you're 100 feet higher up in the air than where they are now. So that they're going to be reduced in their ability to produce agriculturally further down, because we've got friends that have gardens down below, and it's much, the temperature is better, there's less frost, there's less cold wind, theirs is sheltered because of the trees around them. That is a much better site where they are now. The other thing is I've talked to the mayor of Hayden, and he's asked that they come in and talk to them about the remodel, and they have not done so. And he quoted something like $300,000 for the sewer system, not $500,000. And I say that that is not a burden. If you look at their construction costs for new, they're going to have to put They're gonna have to bulldoze that area. They're gonna have to put new tarping, a new parking down. They're gonna have to do new structuring. That is far more expensive than to do that remodeling. And they've already got a beautiful building there. They can go ahead and put their classrooms or whatever on the other end or attach it, however. And in my article, I said, you know, this building is not that old. It's 10 years old. If you didn't design it properly, that's your problem. You should have looked at this in the future. You should have been able to walk the halls and imagine in your imagination how this was going to fit your constituency. Why are we, the neighbors, going to have to be burdened because you didn't prepare properly? And we're being burdened. Believe me. The other thing is that my big gripe is these agencies have signed off, okay? If you look at the roads got signed off. Those roads are little teeny tiny roads. Rimrock.
Excuse me, 30 seconds.
That's
Go
my
ahead.
daughter. I'll take her turn. There's no shoulders. It's a narrow road. They're going to have to expand it. The church is going to have to pay for that expansion, plus it's going to come out of taxpayers' money. There is nothing in that plan that talks about putting for runoff. If you have all those roofs and you have all that under concrete, where is that water going to go? When we have a runoff, and I live right across the street.
Okay, I'm going to have to stop you here.
My daughter.
Annette, did you want to speak?
No,
Oh, you're going to yield your time to her?
yes,
All right, go right ahead.
that's why I'm all wound up. There's going to be a horrendous amount of water. My property across the street, when we have runoff, though it's a very deep ravine, and it is not only filled up with water, it spills over the top. So when you look at that church, that proposed church, and you look at the roofing and the amount of blacktop, where is that water going? There are 2 ditches on the side. One is going to go into Avondale, one is going to go into Hayden Lake. And that is a real concern for us because we already have a millfill problem, and that's going to be the gasoline and all the junk that comes from underneath the cars that's potentially going to get into the water. And there is nothing in there for holding pond, nothing. They talk about not having enough space. They've still got 10 acres. I mean, 10 acres is 10 acres. What are you going to do? They can't make it any different. And there was another part of the agencies that signed off that really griped me. Well, that's a watershed. And my whole thing is what we cannot figure out why you need 20,000 square feet for 8 homeschool kids and a gymnasium. That makes no sense to me, and it makes no sense logistically and financially or logically. What is really going on here? Why do you need 20,000 square feet for 8 homeschool kid? And so it's like an old story. You get the foot in the door, and now we're going to go ahead and down the road, we're going to go ahead and put in new CUPs. And the next thing we know, we're going to have a Seventh-day Adventist, a major school, and an academy. Okay, then you go into what's going to happen with the remaining 22,000 square feet. We don't know what's going on there. All we know is that we've been told that they are going to have AA meetings, and they're going to have free lunches, and they're going to have a clinic, a free medical clinic, and they're going to have youth rallies, and they're going to have this, and they're going to have that, and they're going to have this, and they're going to have, and all we see is this huge problem that we as neighbors are going to have to contend with, the noise, the traffic. Who are these people that are going to be coming? And not only that, these people that are coming to this church don't live in the immediate area. They're coming from Athol, they're coming from Rathdrum, they're coming from Post Falls, and they have to drive an additional 2 miles up the road to get to this, quote, new church. They're saving themselves if they stay down at the bottom. It's a much better facility. It's easy in, it's easy out, it's not bothering anybody, and it is a much better situation for them. And the last questions I want to ask you as personally is, do you want this if this was in your front yard? This is the size of Safeway, 52,000 square feet. And it's not just a nice knot, it is spanned out, so it's even worse. It's more like a Lowe's. Do you want that across the street from your house?
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. Okay, so our next speaker, Brant Hay, in favor, may wish to speak? Yes, I'll speak. Come right up, sir. Kathy, is it working?
We're dead on the battery, so we'll listen to the buzzer.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Hay, go right ahead, sir.
Yes, I'm Brant Hay at 1869 East Celtice Way in Post Falls. I am the architect for the project, and I just wanted to highlight a few things about this that I think are relevant. So, when a project like this is explicitly anticipated by zoning as something eligible for a conditional use, the first challenge that comes when you plan a project like this is knowing the context. How do you design it in a way that fits as well as possible? I think we've all seen the way most new church projects are done in the county and across the country, and they're really driven by what's most cost effective. So if you look at this parcel as an example, the most cost effective way to build this building for the church would be one large rectangle, perhaps like a Safeway, as was said earlier, and it would be very industrial. You would have parking all gathered in one spot to make it the most efficient possible. And that would be the most cost-effective way for a church to be built, and that is how they are typically done, and you can see them in this area done like that. However, this is a context that, in the opinion of myself and in the opinion of all the people at the church involved with the planning, a context that would just be very inappropriate. And so the direction that I've been given on this from the beginning, and that would have been my impulse without the direction, and that came even before any public comment was this really needs to feel residential as much as possible for a church school campus. And so the way we approached it is, if you look at it, we didn't gather all the parking in one spot. We stretched it out so that any individual portion of the parking lot is not super thick. It's basically 3 bays at the most in terms of depth, which reduces the impact. We increased the buffer along the front. So by right, the church could have pushed the asphalt right up to the property line, or much closer than it is, but there was an intentional goal of keeping more green space, setting the building back more to soften the impact on the community and on driving by. And the other thing that is key is when you have a building that's large, a big box like a Safeway or something, it's one massing on the whole thing. The way this is set up is there are 3 distinct sort of anchor massings within it, and then the rest of it is set up as a connector. And when it's set up like that, it de-emphasizes certain portions of the building, so it does not feel as overwhelming in scale as some of the other examples that have been mentioned earlier. It so happens that just down the street to the east from this is the largest existing building in the area. I don't know the exact square footage of it, but it was on the far right end of Vlad's slide, but it is a massive, massive shop. And it's pretty common in this area. There are buildings much larger than houses because of the agriculture use in the area and shops and things like that. And so one of the goals with this was to try to use that as almost like a guiding module when we broke up the massing of this, so that no single part of this really got too much out of scale with anything like that. So I just wanted to highlight that because I think that's important in the effort the church is making to fit this in as well as can be done.
Thank you, sir. Was that time up? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have Wendy, is it Goskell? Okay, opposed, wishes to speak. Go right ahead, ma'am. And right behind you will be Brent Cornelson.
I live at 5152 East Lancaster for 20 years. We have seen many homes and families move into our beautiful rural area. Growth and development will happen, but it needs to be done responsibly. And it's up to you as the Kootenai County Commissioners to make sure it's done in a safe and prudent manner. I am not against the Seventh-day Adventist Church in our community. They are already part of our community. They are less than 2 miles away down the road in a more commercial area on Lancaster and government? Why are they not willing to use their existing property to build their church, school, health clinic on that 10 acres in Hayden? It is much closer for their congregation to go to. Some of our concerns with them out on Rimrock is the traffic. The roads are small. And it also will change the landscape of the rural area with a 42,000 square foot building and the parking lot to accommodate that. That is wrong. Wrong for our community, wrong for the wildlife, wrong for Hayden Lake and Avondale Lake. The watershed that runs off of that 10 acres feeds those two lakes. Development is happening, growth is here, but commissioners, let's be responsible. That 10-acre parcel needs to be a home with a family on it, with 3 cars, not making a change of having a 42,000 square foot building with 175 cars. At our last meeting, there was a rebuttal statement at the end given by Don, who represented the church, challenging my integrity. He said that they had never planned on putting a health clinic on the property. Today is my rebuttal on that. I have a copy for you of where they do state that they were putting a health clinic on the property. The church also has tried to state that they will be burdened if the county or if you deny this permit. Don't let them bully you. They already have a 10-acre parcel within 2 miles from this location. The true burden will fall on the residents who live out in the Lancaster Rimrock area. Our burden will be the additional non-residential traffic, the change of that rural, beautiful environment, and the watershed. Hundreds of cars parked in that parking lot, and then having that water run off into our 2 beautiful lakes. Commissioners, this is in your hands. It is your decision to decide how our county will grow.
Okay, thank you. All right, Brent, in favor, may wish to speak. And behind Brent, we have Colette Purchase. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Brent Cornelison. I'm a professional engineer, and I've been involved in the church's project since approximately 2008, when we first discussed remodeling and adding on to the church to address some of the deficiencies. Over time, we became aware that these deficiencies and improvements would require us to upgrade the existing facility substantially, including connecting to city sewer, improvements to street and frontage, bike paths, etc. Also having to upgrade the existing facility fire sprinklers, installing a new elevator system, upgrading to commercial elevator system, and then in addition to that, facility modifications to make those things happen. And base estimates for all these things were approaching $1 million. And that would just get us to the point where we could start addressing some of the issues with the facility. I'm not going to go on to all those details. That would take way more time than we have, but that's when we started to look into other options than to just stay put there. It's really been a long journey, 2008 to now, to where we are now. To make these decisions, we didn't make them lightly. It would be easier to stay put, but it would, in my opinion, it would put a substantial or very large burden on the church to redevelop this lot and add new facilities to meet the church's needs. That's all I got.
Okay, any questions? Thank you, sir. Colette? Opposed, does wish to speak?
Giving me her time, so she's going to waiver her time to me.
Okay, that's fine. And behind, I guess that'll be 6 minutes then, and then we have Caleb. Let me make a statement here, folks. We have a number of folks who would like to testify, and that's certainly your privilege. But if we hear the same thing 15 or 18 times over, it doesn't make the case any stronger. So if you're willing to yield your time to somebody else, not necessarily add it, but if you're thinking twice about it, believe me, we've already read many of the comments, and you're certainly welcome to do so, but it would help expedite the meeting. And if you want us to deliberate tonight, as opposed to postponing it, the sooner we wrap up the testimony, the easier it is for us. Go right ahead, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Colette Purchase, and I reside at 12806 North Sunflower Loop in Hayden. I want to start by saying in September of last year, me, Bryn Chatfield, and Linda Kalisa formed the Save the Lancaster Corridor Alliance and met with the church. We met with Pastor Morgan, we met with Don Eckensroth, we met with Jimmy Johnson, who's the treasurer for the Upper Columbia Conference, and Rodney Mills, who was the vice president. During that meeting, we were promised, absolutely promised, handshakes that they would go back to the city of Hayden and pursue a remodel. They have not done that. So that brings into question for me, what else maybe are they not being completely forthright about? I heard them talk about the $500,000 sewer, the burden of costs. Take 42,000 square feet. At best, you might get it built for $200 a square foot. I don't know where, because right now, quoting what I have seen is somewhere between 300 and 400. You're looking on the low side of $8 million. You're looking on the high side of $16 million to build this church. And you want to say that 200 to 300 parishioners are going to bring in the money to finance $12 million? They're talking about $1 million to get started. The burden is a loan you can't afford. The burden is the cost of that new build. Staying where you're at and remodeling is way cheaper. So in talking with Jimmy Johnson, who's their treasurer, who I had hours and hours of conversations with about this, he confided in me. And he flat out said, the church can't afford it. But don't say I said that. But I'm not going to hold his conference anymore, his confidence, because the church isn't being honest. Just take an example on their own website, their own membership, 346 members. That's on their website. They're saying they have 200. And in 5 years, they're going to be to 300. They're already over it. You add 100 more members are going to grow. They're at 446. It's things like this that make you sit back and say, what really is the truth? She got up and testified. They don't have a meeting room. We sat in a meeting room, in a conference room. We sat with all of them. There's a meeting room. There's a conference room. They talked about the money they're raising. You go on their website, they're right now trying to raise $100,000. They're $30,000 of the way there. You need to raise a lot more than that to finance $8, $12, $16 million. I just want to say, there's so many things that were said here today that just don't pan out. I'm a businesswoman. I built a multi-million-dollar business and sold it. I know cash flow. I know loans. I know everything better than most. I don't believe that the true use of this church is being talked about. When we were in that meeting, they talked about everything from holding disaster preparedness meetings there for the whole county, holding disaster shelters there in the event of emergencies. The uses went on and on and on and on. It wasn't just some homeschooling and some church going. That wasn't it at all. The uses they were talking about was like a community center. And now they're going to have kids outside, and they're going to be pounding and doing carpentry, like they said. But Joan Woodard said 50 decibels of noise. Do you know what 50 decibels of noise is? Their car alarms will violate that 50 decibels all day long. And the World Health Organization sets 50 decibels for a residential neighborhood. So that's in keeping with what residential neighborhoods should have. Who are we going to call when they're violating the noise ordinance? They talked about they have to comply with noise. There's no noise ordinance in Kootenai County. So when they're violating the noise and going over the 50 decibels, and they're having their free health clinic, and 500 people are suddenly at this church on a Saturday or a Sunday, and they're parked on Rimrock and Lancaster, who do we call? Code enforcement on a Saturday? It's not the sheriff. The sheriff doesn't enforce a noise ordinance. I think we have to look at this, and you have to look at 42,000 square feet with the ... line that I know has been disputed over and over and over, but I've never known an architect who can't draw to scale, and if that represents 1,500 square feet, I'm like absolutely shocked. It's as big as half of one of those 20,000 square foot parcels. You mean that they didn't sit down and talk about future growth with their own architect? He just kind of put it in there on the willy-nilly? We have to look at all the uses and the size, and we have to expect that this is a community center here. That's what this is going to be, a community center with noise. And we all have our homes. This is our sanctuary, our neighborhood that we bought into a country environment. And it's not fair to ruin all our sanctuaries so they can build their community center with, a church. I really hope that common sense will prevail here, that you'll go to the Albertsons tonight to do your shopping, or you'll go to the Walmart and you'll walk around and say, really? You need all this for 200 people?
Thank you, Colette. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Caleb Morgan? Does not wish to speak? Okay. Crossed off. Okay, then. Melissa Butterfield, in favor, does not wish to speak. Okay. So you have Dean Hogginson, opposed, wish to speak. Dean?
Commissioners, thanks for listening. And I'm Dean Hagginson. I live at 3133 East Lancaster Road in Hayden. And I want to be very clear about something at the outset. I'm supportive of the church. I don't want to do anything to adversely impact the church's faith or educational missions. But I'm opposed to this special use permit for the reasons I'll give you. The Rimrock Lancaster intersections are already pretty busy, and now it's proposed to 2 new approaches, one on each side of the intersection. As a close neighbor, we frequently experience very marginal water pressure, and for North Kootenai, and we think a major upgrade would be needed. Our property is immediately west of the subject property. The soil in that area is very impervious clay, and we think the runoff from a commercial and institutional use will likely end up in Hayden Lake. We don't like the light pollution that would result from the buildings and the parking areas and so on. More importantly, we and our neighbors wish to preserve the integrity of the agricultural zone. We're concerned this might be the first of future special use permits incompatible with the agricultural zone. Let me back up something I forgot to say at the beginning. I don't want to adversely impact the church. And I don't find credible the argument that the unmet needs can't be met on the existing 10-acre parcel. If they can't, there are plenty of options in the county for land to build a new church. And from 40 years in construction, I know that the land cost in the total project is a small part of it. So they could be somewhere else. It doesn't have to be. I understand that it's donated property, and for that reason, they'd like to be there. But we don't think it's an appropriate place, and we would like to see the ag zone preserved. I think off here the staff person mentioned the petitions. I think there's like 1,300 petitions out there in opposition. So once again, we support the church. God bless them. We want to see them achieve their goals, but we don't want to see it at Lancaster and Rimrock. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Okay, Charlene Lord, Opposed, wishes to speak?
My name's Mark Lord. Charlene Lord is yielding her time to me.
Okay,
this
fair
evening.
enough.
So, and I'm one of the signed-up speakers on there as well. So again, my name is Mark Lord. I live at 12574 North Sunflower Loop in Hayden. So good evening, Commissioners. To start off, I'd like to thank the hearing examiner, Joan Woodard, for her diligent and insightful work in reviewing this CUP. I'd also like to thank the county for providing this opportunity for public comment, but I must say that due to an unfortunate set of circumstances, this and all the previous public hearings could have been avoided. The circumstances I refer to are the planning department staff's dereliction of their duty to follow the comprehensive plan that they prepared and have the responsibility to enforce. The comprehensive plan is intended to function in conjunction with the Kootenai County zoning ordinance. Therefore, one cannot be reviewed without consideration of the other. The more restricted of the two must take precedence, which in this case is that comprehensive plan. In this case, an analogy could be made to the game of rock, paper, scissors. The zoning ordinance is the scissors to the rock of the comprehensive plan, or in other words, the zoning ordinance is the rock to the paper of the comprehensive plan. I'm an architect with over 45 years of commercial development experience, and prior to serving as a hearing examiner, Joan Woodard has over 37 years of commercial development experience. Therefore, I find it ironic that two highly experienced professionals who come from pro-development backgrounds would both come to the same conclusion, that this project is inappropriate based on the county's own comprehensive plan. In her findings, Joan Woodard determined that there was no merit to any violation of RLUIPA federal law by Kootenai County towards the applicant. However, I'd like to point out another very important federal law that was presented by the attorney for the applicant. Their attorney indicated the applicant's existing building located at Government Way in Lancaster cannot accommodate the requirements necessary to meet the Americans with Disability Act, ADA. The fact is, the current building constructed and completed in November of 2004 and should have been built to meet all ADA requirements, given that ADA was passed into federal law 14 years earlier in July 26, 1990. Therefore, there have been very few significant changes to ADA since 1990. Therefore, if their current facility is not in substantial compliance with ADA, then they have been in violation of that federal law from the very beginning. In closing, I'd like to borrow a passage from Joan Woodard's case recommendations, and I quote, "In the county's introduction to the comprehensive plan, the authors provided a 1961 quote from John F. Kennedy, and I quote, 'The basis of effective government is public confidence,' end quote. This inclusion is informative of the values represented by all those who participated in the development of the plan and the intention that the citizens of Kootenai County should be able to rely on this document and the protections it contemplated in making their decisions about where and how they live."
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Okay. It's Jim Cabaton. Did I say that correctly? Ciabaton? What's the correct surname, sir? Cabatoni. Okay. Opposed, does wish to speak.
Tony, 15304 North Shenandoah, Hayden. I see there are two questions here. The permit, is it right? Secondly, RLUIPA is another issue. 1,373 petitioners are against it. 2 filings by the examiners denied. The lady that lives across the street, adjacent property owners, neighbors, community, traffic problems, runoff, wildlife, all these things, an overwhelming voice against this petition. RLUIPA. Will we discard the will of the people because we're afraid of a legal challenge? I don't think so. Idaho is truly land of the free, home of the brave. I believe it. After the military and airlines, 11 states I've lived in Europe, and I can tell you, this is the last vestige of bravery and freedom. 2 parts to our LUPA, discrimination and substantial burden. Let's talk about discrimination. It doesn't matter who would have tried to get this petition going. If it was a Catholic church, a Protestant church, a Lutheran church, a mosque, Home Depot, Sherwin-Williams, the result would have been the same from these people. Not there. It's agricultural. We hope that this church grows. We hope that they're successful in their worship. I personally attended a number of their prophecy
Conferences.
lectures. I did. They were kind to me. They're conservative people. They're family-oriented. They're God-fearing people. I like them. But I don't bend the rules or twist the meanings because I like somebody or for me. I'm not a lawyer or a politician. I don't do those things. And personally, I just don't see how accepting a lot, 10-acre lot, 1.5 miles from another one, is a substantial burden. If we search the hearing, I believe there's a quote from the church stating the cost is nearly as much to renovate as to build new. This was a quote from early in the hearings. They were looking at that possibility, and I think by all practical means, it is a very real possibility to renovate. Even now, if you look at that area, there's hundreds of houses going up. There will be sewerage, there will be water, there will be utilities, there is construction. It's even a more workable solution now. We are your people. We hope and pray that you're in our corner. We hope and pray that you have the courage and that you have the energy to fight for us. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Miguel Macias. Opposed, does not wish to speak. Okay. Justin Howard, opposed, does not wish to speak. S, don't know if it's male or female, doesn't matter, right? Murphy, opposed, does not wish to speak. Tammy Batson, opposed, may wish to speak. So you want to take 6 minutes, is that it? Yeah, come forward.
Tammy Bateson, 3125 East Lancaster. I have previously submitted an email regarding the CUP and RLUIPA considerations. I just have a few follow-up comments. In the last meeting, one of the applicant's lawyers stated that the neighbors' opinions were irrelevant. However, these neighbors are your constituents. Our votes have granted you this position, and I don't find anything irrelevant about that. Our voices do matter, and we have continuously voiced opposition to this development, not in any regards of anti-church, religion, or anything else, but in the type of development that's being proposed. This is not a freedom of religion issue. There really aren't any grounds for the conditional use permit or the RLUIPA. The applicant has full ability. They don't want to, but they have full ability to remodel. There's going to be a cost either way. They already have existing structure. They already have the same amount of 10 acres. They have that land. Cut down some trees if you want to grow some food. There is not any substantial burden present. There is an inadequacy of a wish list. Contrary to the developer or the architect, I live on Lancaster. I travel up that road all the time. The largest buildings, the largest shops are between 6,000 and 10,000 square feet. These homes, these shops, there is nothing remotely even close to the stated minimum of 42,000 square feet here. Lancaster is not a major thoroughfare. It is a 2-lane road. We are a neighborhood. Again, this has been supported by the hearing examiner's denial twice. The applicant is using legal language to try to intimidate. Please don't fall for this. We haven't. The applicant has stated that this would be a benefit for our neighborhood, for our community, but it is the exact opposite. They have confirmed that most of the church members do not live anywhere close to this proposed site. That absolutely will increase traffic. They said it'd only be about 27, something like that, cars a day. However, Sandy stated in the last meeting that no traffic study had been done, nor would be done until after the approval, but that is a dismissal of that concern, and I find that offensive. This is where we live. This is where we ride our bikes, walk our kids, walk our dogs. This is our homes, our land. You do the traffic study after, eminent domain would be enacted, and we would lose our access, our driveways, our front yards, our backyards. This is not appropriate. Noise pollution has been stated, obviously. The applicant stated in their last words in the meeting that, meeting with their words, that they have the right to have any function as any other church, any party, get together, Thanksgiving, youth group, whatever it is, as they should. That is not the issue. However, we are in the country. We are rural. That is noise. That is people. That is traffic. We are there to be away from large groups of people. Lots of noise. We don't want lots of parties and people and traffic in front of our homes and our driveways. Light pollution is also another serious issue. Again, Sandy stated that the lights would be shielded so there isn't any problem. However, there are many scientific studies that have shown that lights in a facility as this cause many serious health issues. James Madison University has done many studies on light pollution, as has the think tank Dark Sky Association. One of their studies showed a facility of 42,000 square feet in a rural area just like this. Those lights could be seen for miles. That type of light all night long, or even part of the night, actually has been is a huge conservation issue. It affects animals breeding, it affects their corridors, it affects their roaming and feeding patterns. It can affect plant growing and food, which can affect our food supply. I'm not stating these facts. These are what's stated by the scientists. For people, lights like this, especially for Linda across the street, have absolutely shown that it decreases melatonin. A decrease in melatonin leads to increased breast cancer, leads to mental health issues, and there's a whole plethora I didn't want to bore you with, but lots of problems here. That is the real substantial burden. The church does not have one. They have an inadequacy of a wish list. The true substantial burden would be borne by every single neighbor within miles, not across the street, but within miles of how this would affect everybody. And basically, it comes kind of down to this. Just because one person with a large wallet wants to bribe a church so he can put a gas station in should not in any way circumvent our laws, our codes, or welfare for an entire community. The church can remodel. They have the ability. And there are plenty of other places for a gas station. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so moving on. Tobias Bateson, opposed, does not wish to speak. Linda Radigan, opposed, may wish to speak. Okay, come right up, sir.
Hi, my name is Kevin Radigan. I live at 37137 East Hayden Lake Road. I've been involved in construction all of my life, and it's well known that the purpose of the conditional use permit was instituted so that to provide a vehicle for the community to build a structure that would normally not be built within the zoning that exists in that area, that would benefit the community and that was supported by the community. You've all received the petitions. The community as a whole does not feel benefited by this, and the community as a whole does not feel like that they want it there. They do not support it. For those reasons alone and nothing else, you can and should deny this CUP, as all it is doing is using a way to circumvent the zoning laws. That should not be allowed.
Thank you, sir. Brian Moss, opposed? No indication. Yes, sir, would you wish to speak?
Thank you. My name is Brian Moss. I live at 12695 North Pebble Creek Drive. Good evening, commissioners, and thank you for your time. I know this is a thankless job. Having come from
We've
this
heard that
background
many
myself.
times.
Yes, I know, and having worked in it myself. I'm speaking to you this evening from a land use perspective solely, and what I would say is this is the right project, but it's in the wrong area. And that's because it is inconsistent with land use planning, as it is cited in code today. And there's a reason that the residents in that area, including myself, live in that area. We don't live, you know, out on the prairie. There's a reason we live there. And that is because it's a little bit, I just mean a little bit, away from the quote-unquote commercial, industrial, and otherwise land use activities that's being discussed tonight. So again, right project, wrong location. It's been addressed a little bit tonight. I don't want to go over too much. 10 acres for 10 acres. I still am not real clear on the economics. Having a construction background way in the past and having worked in land use my entire career, that doesn't make sense to me, but I'm not privy to the church's books. The other concern that I have is the church is not serving the immediate community. Again, not a criticism of the church, what they do. I think it's great. I support that, but I can't understand why this is even being considered when the community is saying, this is not what we want, this is not serving the community. It's like putting a Rite Aid someplace where somebody would never go to Rite Aid. Why are we doing that? So then finally, for the county's perspective, and certainly for the commissioner's perspective, the project I don't think is a good example of wise planning, with all due respect. And again, opens the door for inconsistent land use. Now that creates a problem, because in the future, once that door is open for inconsistent land use, you're going to have other projects coming before you. I don't know what they're going to be, but they will come before you. And once that door is open, it's very, very difficult for the local jurisdiction to close that door. So with that said, I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Paul Lawson, opposed, does wish to speak? Come right up, sir.
Commissioners, thank you very much for your time this evening. I don't want to rehash things, excuse me, but I'd like to bring up some stuff tonight that I think we should notice, that everybody in favor, who spoke in favor of this evening, somehow financially tied to the church, working for them, employed by them. None of them are residents. None of them live anywhere near it. The other thing that just came to light this evening is this incredible agricultural curriculum that the church has. That is the very first time we've heard about this. Can the church supply any curriculum that they have for these courses here this evening?
Go right ahead, sir. Yeah, you're addressing us, actually.
Right. Also, to the size, per the architect himself, he used the term, so the building won't feel so overwhelming. That would tell me it's overwhelming, I would think. He points out Mr. Rosenberger's active agricultural barn on his property that is a half-mile off the road on over 500 active acres of agriculture. So that's pretty disingenuous. Pretty much, you know, your guys' oath is for the residents of Kootenai County, and we've all voiced it. You know, this is an out-of-state corporation. So I would really hope you consider our interests over that. So thanks again for your time very much.
Thank you, sir. David, we've got folks on Zoom, do we?
Yes, sir. Bear with me. I'll just start with the first one on the list and ask if I can't actually tell what this looks like. Alice, ALICIAHUMISTON. Did you wish to speak? Sorry, I was admitting some more people that apparently had tried to join and I didn't realize it. Looks like Jolyn Westman is next up. I'm just taking these in the order that they're listed. Johlen Westman, did you wish to speak? Ann Morgan. Randy Nevin. Ann. I'm just going through each of these because I don't have a way of knowing whether they want to speak or not. B5 Dance, did you wish to speak? If you do, please unmute yourself at this time. They unmuted, but they're not speaking.
They're unmuted and not speaking?
Well, they're unmuted. I mean, you can
Are
see
your
right
s-
there on the screen.
And your speakers are on.
Oh,
Hi, this is Len Westman. You didn't unmute me.
my apologies. Go right ahead.
Can I speak, please?
Yes,
Yeah, go right ahead, sir.
Okay. My name's Leonard Westman. I live at 3496 East St. James Avenue. I'm about 3 blocks off of Lancaster. I'm sorry if I go back to the water issue, but when they redid Lancaster Road back about 10, 12 years ago, and they reconfigured the water flow, I get so much water through my backyard that it now floods. And if this project were to go through, then I'm going to get even more water in my backyard. I used to be able to mow my backyard April, May. Now it's the last 4 years, it's been July. I don't even need to turn on my sprinkler system. And there's been so much water going down the back end that it actually uprooted my sprinkler system. So if this project goes through, I'm going to get even more water down my back. And I'm losing a good portion of my backyard because of that. Another issue with the water is we kayak. We go down to the Sportsman Axis off of Lancaster and we kayak on Hayden Lake. We have seen a noticeable decrease in the water quality. The amount of plant vegetation is increasing. The color of the water is now turning brownish. That's all due to runoff, fertilizer, hydrocarbons coming from petrol going into the lake, causing an increase in the amount of aqua plants. The number of big lily pad formations is increasing. So the development around Hayden Lake is definitely hurting the water quality. And this will only impact that further. And I noticed that back in February when we had that big snowstorm followed up by rain and then the windstorm. If you were to drive up Rimrock from off of the road that goes around the lake coming out of Hayden Lake, the amount of water running down those ditches directly into the lake is all runoff from that property, because that property, even though it's stated that it's fairly flat, it's higher than Lancaster Road. And all that water goes right to the lakes. And my last issue, if I've got plenty of time, is going back to what some of the other people have said about the church. You know, we don't have any problem with the church, but I don't believe that they have been totally honest with us. They originally told us that they only met on Saturday morning during non-rush hour traffic. Then it was brought up, well, don't you meet Wednesday evenings? Oh yeah, we do that also. Then it was brought up that they're now holding Sunday church services. Oh yeah, we've rented it out. And a couple of weeks ago, and I've noticed now they're meeting Friday night.
Okay, sir, I need to stop you at this point. The 3 minutes are up. Kathy, would you give us a 30-second warning, please? Okay, thank you. David, do we have other folks
I'm
who
going to
wish to
start
speak?
back at the beginning. It was my error. I didn't have the speakers turned up.
That's fine.
Leslie caught me on that.
How many folks are on?
Looks like a dozen or more. You can see them on the screen. All these mics right here, so bear with me. I'll start back at B5 Dance. If you wanted to speak, now would be your opportunity. Yes. I'm sorry.
Hi.
Go right ahead.
Name and
No
address,
problem.
please. Go ahead.
My name is Bryn Chatfield. I live at 12753 North Sunflower Loop. And I think you're going to find that the residents of Lancaster are fiercely loyal. We enjoy living out in the country. We love dodging deer and breaking for turkeys. I have myself experienced the effects of poor planning as I have driven through fire and prayed for my life. And I see this church on the corner of Lancaster and Rimrock as poor planning. It does not follow along with the CUP, and there is obvious opposition to it. We really appreciate Joan Woodard looking at the facts, and we really appreciate your time. So thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next.
Alicia, it looks like it's Aliciahumiston. Did you wish to speak?
I'm just going to stand on the testimony that I've written in, and I strongly oppose this project. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Go right ahead, David.
Anne, A-N-N-E. Apparently not. Annie Morgan, A-N-N-I-E, Morgan. You do have your hand raised, Annie, I see. Did you wish to speak? Now would be the time.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I am in favor of the granting of the conditional use permit for the Seventh-day Adventist Church at the corner of Rimrock and Lancaster. One of the things that I would like to share is that I appreciate the concerns of neighbors, and we would want it to be a pleasant experience for them. One of the things that I've observed in listening to the hearing is that prior to the public hearing, the county had evaluated this project in several different departments. So many of the different county departments had looked at the aspects of the impact on the environment, the impact on the water, the impact on traffic, and there was no opposition to moving forward with this permit, as I heard. I understand that some of the interests of the neighbors may be personal concern. However, I do not see any compelling hardship for the county or the government in going forward with this project. I'd also like to point out that if you have 10 acres of property, this could be comparable possibly to, 2 or 3 home places, which could include a shop, a barn, a home, paving, and various things like that. So the facility that's being requested to be built on this property would be a beautiful facility, as I see the outline of the landscaping and things like that. And I don't believe that it would have much more impact than 2 or 3 home places on the same piece of land. So while I respectfully appreciate the concerns of the opposition, I do see that they are more personal and that the interests of the county and the area can be well served by a well-planned and landscaped church building that takes these concerns into account. So I just appreciate being able to speak in favor of the project, and thank you for this time.
Okay. Annie, where do you live?
Your address, please?
Sorry, at 30755 North Caravel in Apple, Idaho.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so why don't we take a very quick 5-minute break and we'll resume. So it's now 7:30. We'll resume at 7:35. Thank you. please.
Next up is Boots, B-O-O-T-S. Did you wish to speak? Apparently not. How about Gail's iPhone?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Go right ahead.
Thank you. I am opposed.
Ma'am, we need your name and address, please. Name and address.
Yes, Janice Boots, 13056 North Knox Drive, Hayden.
Okay. Thank you. Proceed.
The one thing that I hear them saying is that they don't want to remodel, and then this is the ideal place for them, but it's only ideal for the church group. It seems that there was a lot of opposition when they discovered that. It seems like they should be going out somewhere else to find a good area to build that is more suitable for everybody, if they don't want to remodel. I have heard that, the property that they're currently on has become very valuable, and this is why they want to move, and I don't know, that's just what I've heard. At any rate, I am very much opposed to the increased traffic, the water quality, all of the things that have been said, and and the other thing for sure is that it opens a door for other things like this, to not just churches, but churches fine, but other developments to come in and take over the agriculture area. Anyway, thank you for letting me speak. I wasn't really expecting to be asked.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. David?
Gail's iPhone. Gil Rossner. Guy Maniscalco.
Hello, this is Gil Rossner.
Go right ahead,
Go
sir.
ahead.
Address, please.
Actually, I do not wish to speak. I am opposed and have given you written testimony.
Okay.
Emailed to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Guy Maniscalco.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Guy Maniscalco. I live at 7087 North Valley Street in Dalton Gardens. I want to just say that I'm strongly in favor of granting the conditional use permit for the church. And I better hold the rest of my comments to myself. After hearing all the testimony, I know it's very passionate, and I just would hope that we stick with the law. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Jan, P-E-T-R-I-E, Jan Petrie. Jim Shelton. Joey Grunden. We've heard from Mr. Westman. John Aldridge. Judy. Kathy Verberg, V-E-R-B-U-R-G. Leslie Wild.
I'm not going to speak this evening. We have written in and followed and also testified, and my address is 12057 North Rimrock, and we would really appreciate the commissioners representing our concerns.
And this was Leslie?
Yes, and we're opposed to the development.
Thank you, ma'am.
Last on the list was Mark Stice, S-T-I-C-E.
May I say something?
Go right ahead.
My question always has been, this property was donated to the church.
Excuse me.
Why can't they sell that
Where's-
property and
yeah.
We don't have to
relocate
answer
to a
it.
more suitable location?
Okay, ma'am, we're not, you're,
And I'm sorry, I live at 3136 East York Court, which is just 2 streets down from Lancaster on Rimlock.
And was this Kathy?
Thank you.
okay, thank you, ma'am. Was that it, David?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And we have no one on conference phone. So I'm going to turn it back over to the applicant. Are you, David, you're okay? Oh, okay. I want to make sure we didn't overlook someone. So we've got 15 minutes. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to split this time with Mr. Embry. I heard the phrase teeny tiny roads, and I refer you back, not with what Landon is passing out right now, but Lakes Highway District's letter, which states that Lancaster is an urban minor arterial that sees 3,600 cars per day, and 85% of those cars are going 55 miles an hour or faster. That's from the district's engineer. I heard some concerns about the stormwater plan. This facility cannot be built without an approved stormwater plan that meets the requirements of the Community Development Department's rules and regulations. It is not typical to prepare a plan like that before an application is approved because the cost on something like this would run into the tens of thousands of dollars. So that is the reason it's not here. But if one can't be developed and issued, the structure, the parking lot, nothing will be built. I want to address what I just passed out to you, which is a trip generation letter that was prepared by an engineer in our office. The Lakes Highway District said they would require a full traffic impact, or they may require a full traffic impact analysis. We suspect they will, but I want you to look at the chart, and this was prepared for the record using ITE's Trip Generation Manual 10th edition, which is a standard manual to use when putting these types of numbers together. So you'll see the first category has the church, a weekday, when they don't have activity. We see a total of 21 cars, 13 enter and 8 exit. The church on a Saturday, now you'll have to reverse the Saturday and the Sunday rows because their services are held on Sunday. So under Saturday, we have a total of 34 vehicles. You see the enter and exit. At the peak hour, there would be 163 cars, and that would be a peak hour. So it's not an all-day type of traffic. The school, you can see based on 100 students, would be 103 total trips per day. And so those numbers are the numbers based on the square footage or based on the number of students. So I submit that into the record, and I think Catherine will give it, or has given it. With regard to the community petition, I don't know how much research any of you have done on an, I forget the name of what an online petition is. Landon looked it up for me. All it takes to sign that petition is an email address. 1 or 2 or 3, or any one of you could have 10, and I'm not insinuating that was done. I'm just stating this so you understand, like I needed to understand. It's all you need. It doesn't matter what state you live in, what country you live in, you can be opposed to Save the Lancaster Corridor. So I'll leave it at that. Lastly,
No
folks,
comments, please, folks, please. Thank you.
Lastly, under conditions of approval, There were 22 of them, and I would ask that you strike or alter 819 and 822. 819 was the hours of operation, 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. We already have the lighting and the noise that are limited, and I ask that for the reason that if they had a prayer meeting or they had a service during the holidays that was at midnight, as many churches do, they would be allowed to do that. I did hear someone who stated concerns about, who do we call if there is a code violation. The Community Development Department regulates and has regulated since I work there the decibels, the lighting. That is exactly what their code enforcement department does. And then on 8.22, the minimum setbacks are at 50 feet, which is very wide or very large. That's a very large setback, and I ask that you consider the setbacks that are administered by ordinance, which are 25 front and rear, and then 10 on the sides. And I believe in the ag zone, they might have a 15 if it's an accessory building. 25 would be a fair amount, and that's as ample as it gets unless you're running a commercial use, a batch plant, something like that. So that's all I have, and unless you have questions for me, and I will defer my time to Mr. Embry.
Any questions for Sandy Young?
I do. Do you know what's going to happen to the current location?
I do not. The pastor could address that. So
Okay.
if he may come up and speak next and answer that question for you.
Sir, by all means, please.
At this time, my name is David Morgan. I live at 30755 North Caravel Road in Athol, Idaho. As far as the current facility, we don't have definite plans. Our plans are based on what decision you make. But beyond that, if this application is approved, I do have several people that have contacted me, other church groups that are interested in purchasing the property. Realtor has called me and says that they have someone, another church facility, which I'm not aware of who it is. So that's a possibility of being able to sell the property. Right now, I would say about 4 or 5 people have called me interested in the property, because there are other churches that are growing because of the growth in the area, and they're looking for bigger facilities. We had several church groups that have come to us, and I know it's been mentioned in the hearing examiner's report that it becomes commercial based on renting it. I'd like to address that if I may. We charge $125 a week just to cover janitorial and cleaning costs and heating and electrical. So it's not a commercial venture. It's really more of a ministry of helping another church being able to operate in the COVID situation, and so they don't have to visit or have their services, Hayden Bible Fellowship, outside during the wintertime. So.
And then how much did the architect project that the new facility would cost?
We haven't.
So you have architectural drawings in a building, but you don't know, you haven't told them how much it's going to cost?
You don't have a contractor's bid yet, is that correct?
No, but our architect gave us,
Yeah, they did.
so.
Okay. Fair enough. Thank you. Yes, sir. Come forward.
Just brief comments in 2 categories. First, as to the substantial burden element of things, and how these RLUIPA cases have been decided by federal courts. The substantial burden aspect of things will be analyzed in a number of ways. First, as to the current site. And if the application is denied, is there a substantial burden by compelling the church to stay at its current site? And as we've stated, there is. There's a substantial cost every time an improvement or remodel is made. The substantial burden analysis will also be engaged as to the new site. If the application is denied, that forecloses the church's use of that new site. That alone is a substantial burden. Any reliance placed on the notion that, well, they've got an alternative site, they can go elsewhere in the county. Courts have construed that reliance as also imposing a substantial burden. telling an entity or an individual to go elsewhere to freely practice their religion involves cost, expense, delay, and uncertainty. Those courts have construed as substantial burdens. As to the compelling government interest, that compelling governmental interest, if relied upon in a denial, must be factually set forth in the record tonight. The county must be able to point to it now. It cannot be speculative, and it cannot be hypothetical. We give the full measure of respect and understand the neighboring concerns about the project. This is not an easy time in our county as we see the pace of growth change accelerate. But Congress did decide that the protection for the free exercise of religion warrants such a high bar to justify burdening that it does require an identified compelling governmental interest. Neighboring concerns, while understandable, simply are not the same thing. So we'd ask that the application is approved with the conditions of approval.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so that concludes the, Pastor, did you want to say something? But yes, please.
A thought came to me to address, again, my name David Morgan, the question regarding the Brant Hay as our designer. Our committee asked him to kind of stand down because of not going any further, because it would incur further costs. We didn't know what the decision would be made based on the different hearings and your deliberations. So I want to bring that to your attention.
Okay, thank you. Leslie, because we have a quote for our building, did you want to comment on that? Just to give folks a perspective.
Well, I mean, courthouses are different than churches. but
Right.
They're looking at 350 a square foot. So that's, if you can use that as a guideline, I know. And I just see it, I saw another thing where a custom home was going for 400 a square foot, which is astronomical nowadays. I mean, that just, anyway, are you ready to?
Yes, I am. Okay, so I'm going to entertain a motion to end public testimony and enter into deliberations.
So do we do that, or can we, well, one step at a time?
Go right ahead, Pat.
Pat Braden, Civil Deputy Prosecutor for the record, and after, I think the necessary apology profusely for being late to this proceeding. To answer the question, you could go ahead and vote on the motion as it stands to end public testimony, go into deliberations, and then consider at what time to do those deliberations, whether you do them now or defer them to
another time. Sure, absolutely.
Okay, so I move we end public testimony and enter into deliberations.
I second the motion. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Entering into deliberations, that is to say, if that is your preference.
So I would suggest that we postpone deliberations to a date certain. Kathy, do you know if the 20 or the 18th is available? Yeah. Because I would really like an in-depth legal opinion from our attorney. I think when we're dealing with complicated federal law, I would really prefer to have that before I start deliberations.
And you would do that in executive session?
Correct. And then, so Pat, I don't know if you want to have the executive session before deliberations or on a different day.
I think if you do choose to defer deliberations to a different day, then we should have the executive session as part of those deliberations.
As part of those deliberations, okay.
If you choose to deliberate now, then the motion can be brought at any time.
Fair enough.
You know what, I probably have the case file that she.
Okay, so Kathy, you just want to check on that date, please? And then we can make.
The 18th, you have a 9 o'clock public hearing. We could put in the lids if you'd like.
Or 25 is empty, so.
Yeah.
You want 25th, Pat?
We don't need to go that far out, do we?
Yeah, I was going to ask Catherine what the public hearing was on.
It's the vacation for Mr. Hubbard and the fee resolution.
Okay, well,
We can tack on to that.
yeah,
Is that the
neither
18th?
of those two should
yeah.
last
David?
terribly
My
long.
schedule won't last that long, so.
Right.
Okay, fine. And we typically allocate from 9 to 11 anyway. We typically allocate 2 hours on a Thursday.
Right.
It is a Thursday, is that correct? It is. Okay, fair enough. Why don't we do that?
Okay.
Assuming, in fact, because there's a motion on the table, are you okay with deferring to the 18th?
Absolutely.
Okay. So that would,
I don't think the motion's actually been made
yeah,
yet.
go right ahead, Leslie.
I move that we continue into deliberations on March 18th and schedule an executive session connected to that.
I second the motion. Aye.
Aye.
Aye, and for the benefit of the public, when we deliberate, there is absolutely no public input. That is simply a deliberation among and between the three of us, okay? You're welcome to attend, of course, or listen in on Zoom, however, but that is strictly among the three of us, okay? Thank you, everyone. Have a safe trip home, and we will reconvene, I guess, on the 18th. Have a good evening.
It'll be 9 a.m.
9 a.m. on the 18th, which is a week from today.